It has long been known that the best in the world of AI are the Pythonists. But should that mean that PHP is inferior? Not at all. Let's listen to Fabrizio and his story about how, thanks to LLPhant, we can dive into the unlimited ocean of AI. Multimodel, multiplatform, local or SASS-based, with LLPhant, you can build a script to query an LLM, or create a complex RAG using embeddings and function calling. Fabrizio actively contributes to LLPhant. He knows a lot about it, and will now share that knowledge with us. Let's hope so. So go ahead, Fabrizio Balliano and his artificial elephants.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to this section of PHPCon Poland 2024. Before starting, I want to thank you for being here, and I want to give a big thank you to Darek and all the organization for creating this amazing event for us to share. So today we will talk about this. I think it's interesting thing. Okay, it's AI, it's a buzzword today, but I didn't see a lot of speeches here in the conference about AI. I was kind of curious about that. So, but anyway, I hope what you will take away with this speech is like to see maybe a new tool, something that can be effective in maybe some things that we have to sell to our customers, or maybe fun, and a few tips and tricks that I ended up using and finding out during my time working with this tool. So, just a little bit of a presentation. My name is Fabrizio Balliano. I'm an Italian web developer since many, many years. It wasn't even 2000 when I started working with PHP, and I fell in love with it, and I still use it every day. I live in Spain. I work as a freelancer. I'm a full-time Magento developer since a lot of years. I guess somebody already knows what Magento is that about. And I always loved the open source environment. So I've always contributed to stuff and participated in the community. I was a former maintainer of a project called OpenMage, and now I founded my own e-commerce platform based on that. So let's start. Let's dive into the topic. Let's talk AI in PHP at a PHP conference. So let's start with Python. You know, I got a little bit spoiled by the presentation. By the way, if you don't know what that meme is about, you have to know. Search for IT Crowd. You have to watch it, because for us nerds, that's the best TV show ever. No, but seriously, this is like a little bit of the part, a little part of the big ecosystem of AI in Python. And these are just like the first results that you will find if you search on Google, Python, AI, whatever. So this is for historical reason, probably because some of the libraries used to generate models they were done in Python, they were very good, so everything started there, but that doesn't mean we have to stick to that. And obviously, like every talk ever, we have to use this meme. So the point is, one does not simply introduce a whole new infrastructure and a whole new software stack in a company, because maybe maybe you need other kind of developers if you need to start a project in a completely another set of technologies. You need another kind of infrastructure, like server infrastructure. You need some sysadmins that know what's going on with those set of tools. And that's not always easy. It requires more, probably money, and the budget is not always easy to allocate. So, yeah, sometimes it makes sense to stick with your own, with the ecosystem you already have and you already know, and so that the company, the knowledge of the company stays in the same field. But the thing is, here comes the LLPhant. So LLPhant is a framework, and we will see why that's a thing. It was created like not even a couple of years ago by this French guy, French web developer called Maxime Townsend for a company called Theodo. They build AI-related stuff. I'm not related to them. This software is licensed under MIT. Great license that most of the projects use nowadays. And also, you know what? Like, I think that PHP is kind of the king of open source here. So that's really nice that I think that we have a tool that allows us to do good stuff with that in an open source way. So this project is inspired by two things that we saw before, mainly LangChain and LLamaIndex that you probably have heard about during these past months because everything is very new. And exactly, that's a nice segue to this slide. Why do we need a framework at all? So in PHP, we have a lot of clients for different LLMs platforms like OpenAI, Anthropic, whatever, Mistral, etc. So with the client, you just connect to the service and then do stuff. But you know, every client is created in a slightly different way. And the thing is, the AI world is changing super quickly. So maybe you want to use one platform today, but like in a few months, you will need to switch to another platform. And if you just have a single client that's not super comfortable, or I think that's even more important, sometimes you want to mix and match. What I mean with that, it's like we can ask one platform to do something for us, but at the same time, we need to call another platform to do other things that this other specific platform does better. So if we have a little bit of a omni-comprehensive and generic framework to do that, we can do that both at the same time. And sometimes, like just asking stuff to ChatGPT or whatever, it's just a simplification. It's not really enough. We need a little bit more. So a client, just a PHP client for that platform isn't gonna cut it for all that we need. So yeah, let's see what all of this fuzz is about. And I want to tell you that the things that I know about LLPhant are coming from a specific project that I developed for a customer of mine. So it is real-world usage, and it's not just like synthetic or just like an overview of the thing. And we use it in production, so you can use AI for something that's really needed for customers, let's say. So the first thing that I want to tell you about is that LLPhant is multi-vendor, and we started with that concept before in the first slides. So at the moment, the framework supports OpenAI, Anthropic, Mistral, and as a SASS in the SASS world, but you can also use Ollama, which is what you will probably use if you need to keep all of your data local, or if you have particular needs, let's say. And there's no support for Grok if somebody in the crowd knows Grok. So, but it is an open source, so PRs are welcome. And yeah, I actually submitted like a couple of PRs, and they got merged right away. So it's a fairly small environment. If you have a need and if you want to contribute, obviously you're welcome. And also all of the services that are built on OpenAI API definitions are supported, of course. So we start taking a look at code, because at the end of the day, we are technicians. And simply, this framework is very simple. Like AI tends to be complicated if we have to create a model, but that's something that probably nobody of us will ever need to do, because it's a whole other set of knowledge. But anyway, if we want to start using this framework, simply we have a fantastic config variable, and we just instance the OpenAI config class or Ollama config class. OpenAI, yeah, it's the same. We pass like the API key or a few parameters, and then we start interacting with the model, with all the rest of the framework with this class called OpenAI Chat. You know, from the start, it's very easy. We don't need a lot of set of knowledge to start using it. But this framework is also kind of feature-rich, I think. So among the different services that are supported, there are a different set of features that are supported for every platform. There's not really anything we can do about it because some things, like for example, if Anthropic doesn't have the images output, that's not something we can use, obviously. But again, we can mix and match and ask the proper platform to do what we need for us and the rest of the stuff with another platform. So we have text generation. Streaming is like what you see when characters appear on screen like one after the other. Tools, it's actually function calling. For some of the people call it function calling. So when you need, and that's like, to me, that's the most important thing, that I think it's the most important thing. So to ask to a language model to do stuff with other systems. And we will talk about that later. And some of the platform has this feature. Some other, like Ollama, since Ollama is very generic and can work with a lot of different open source language models. So some of the models have these capabilities, some others don't have it. So that's why it's written like some models. And images and text-to-speech are only available for OpenAI, so yeah. Again, I'm very focused on that, but this thing, it's very easy to use. So again, we will see some code, and later we will have a little bit of a quick live demo, let's call it like that. So the first line, it's when we want to ask a language model like a question, super easy. Chat generate text, we pass our prompt. That's what questions are called in the AI world. And we get a response, which is the answer. So it takes a little bit because language models are kind of slow. And we get one string with the answer. That's super easy. If we need to have a stream of text because maybe the answer is going to be very long, and how the language models work, and we will see a little bit of that later. The generation of the text takes longer, so we can maybe choose to cycle over a stream and output stuff while we get it. The problem is sometimes we have formattings into the answer, and it can be challenging to provide the output to the final user while the formatting is still unfinished. So I prefer not to use it. If you can, if your models are and your application case is kind of fast to execute, I would avoid streams. But then we start taking a look at a little bit more interesting things like the set system message. What's the system message? The system message or system prompt, it's like our way to instruct the language model what the language model has to do. So it's not really how the language model is built. We don't touch any of that, it's too complicated. But we say to the language model, okay, then now you are experienced PHP developer, whatever, answer to these next questions in a formal way or answer with just code, whatever. These are a set of instructions that help the model to answer in a proper way to the way that we need it to work. And then we pass the question, and again, we will see later that the answer to that question, it actually adheres to what the system message told the language model to do. And then we have a little bit of some other features like generate image or transcribe audio, super nice. It's one line of code, it's Obviously, when working with SaaS platforms, we have to be careful with costs because they can become pretty expensive pretty easy. And I think I will have one slide later about that. But then again, these were maybe a little bit too simple use case because, we ask a question, we get an answer, but is it really that simple when we are building like a proper software for somebody? And probably not. So I would call this slide like chat is for chatbots. It kind of makes sense. Most of the time, but not only, we probably will build chatbots for users to ask stuff to. And actually what I built with that client that I was talking to you about, it's actually a chatbot. There's this company that works with a lot of information. The information changes a lot. So there are some backend users that need to have access to that information. And we try to build this chatbot that gives answer on those information in a quick way. Obviously, I think as a standard old school developer, I don't think this completely replaces like a good system management software. Like if you have a screen of like a table of data, I think that's sometimes more useful. But you know, it is what it is, and we are asked to build these kind of tools, and they still, for some cases, if they are well fine-tuned, they still work very well. So yeah, most of the times we will end up building a chatbot. And what is this kind of thing that we are seeing? So when you have a chat that's composed by multiple messages, you can, using this framework, but also every platform supports that, you can pass to the language model the whole history of messages in the chat. This creates the context of this, let's call it conversation with the language model. And what this allows the model is to answer to the last question, having information of what was happening before. So as you can see, the last question, can you please provide an example? The language model will know that you're talking about the array map function that we asked information a couple of questions before. So this is probably absolutely necessary for your use case. And so the thing is, the way I use it, I store every message in a, let's call it in a database. And when I need to ask a new message, a new question to the language model, I simply load all of the messages from the history. I pass all of the informations to the language model so that it knows what the full conversation is. And it works very well. What you have to be careful with is if this history becomes too big, then language model, or too messy, like if the conversation changes between one topic and another, sometimes the language models become confused, and it is being proved. I think that's kind of like a limitation of the technology. I'm not really sure, don't quote me on that, but the longer the context it is, the more confused the language model will become. So we have to try to find a way to push user not to make the conversations too long, because then the answer wouldn't be those effective anymore. But yeah, let's move on. Tools or function calling, as we were saying before, which is to me like probably the most important thing ever. So what we see here, it's like we need the language model to understand if the user is asking for some information that we may ask another system to retrieve. So the super quick example, this is actually a screenshot from the documentation of LLPhant. We have super basic PHP class with one method, and then we have a way this function builder build function info static call. It generates some sort of metadata of this method. So like it reads the PHP doc, This is actually something I contributed to. It reads the PHP doc of the function documentation, the parameter documentation, the typings, and all of these things. And it creates like some sort of an array of a description of this tool. And you can then add the tool to the chat object. And then you ask the question. And you're actually saying, OK, dear language model, like let's say, OK, Llama 3. We have this question from the user, but you also have this set of tools. Now there's only one tool, but obviously there can be many tools. And what will happen is it is a multi-step operation that will happen in the background. So what the language model will try to do is like first understand if it can answer the question using one of those tools. That's very interesting to me. And then it will create the call to that function or method or whatever, filling in the parameters the way it thinks it's correct. So this is super, super powerful, but also it's a little bit tricky, you know, because users ask questions sometimes in weird ways, incomplete ways, or referring to some things that you don't know, you as a system there at that point. So, yeah, but what I found out, like, for example, my tip and trick regarding this particular thing, document as much as possible in the doc blocks, but I use Mistral as a Mistral 12 billion as a language model, like local language model. It was the one that worked better than all of the rest of the models, like Llama 3, 3.1. They constantly made mistakes, like, for example, when they need to fill in the parameters, like, you know, this subject variable, body, or whatever. For example, most of the time, and actually my use case was like searching an API based on dates, for example, start and to. And the format of the date needs to be always one specific format, and you need the date to make sense, you know, when you pass it to this API call. So yeah, like Mistral, it's getting it right every time. And Llama until 3.1 wasn't really doing that great. Phi by Microsoft, same thing, a little bit uncertain. So yeah, as a suggestion, maybe try Mistral 12 billion. It's not even that big, so it runs pretty fast. And so next step, the framework, this is what LLPhant will do, will actually call that function, that class method, with the parameters that the language model generated. It will gather the answer, and it will pass it again to the language model saying, okay, we got this answer from the API or this method that we called. And here's the answer again, here's the question from the user again. Can you answer that with this data that we have now? So it's a three-step operation, let's say. Understanding the question, understand which tool we can use, call the tool, and then restart from scratch and say, okay, language model, please now answer the question. So it can become kind of slow. Yeah, but it is what it is. So we will try to make optimizations, and it's not an agentic approach. We will talk a little bit of agentic approach later. But I think this is like the fastest way we can get this set of features running, while agents tend to be much, much slower, and we will see about that a little bit later. But then we have another set of things that are supported by LLPhant and by language models in general, which are embeddings. And we have a right definition, which is like, I have to read it because it's like too difficult to me. Embeddings are vectors stored in an index within a vector database. So yeah, vectors are like a geometrical, mathematical kind of thing that I remember from university, but it's like, I don't know anything about that anymore. So like set of numbers that we store in an ordered way. That's why it's called an index. And we store that index in a vector database. But we also have another simpler and wrong, but actually kind of right definition. So embedding stuff into something, it's actually adding stuff to the LLM. But if you want, I don't have the slides published anywhere yet. But if you want, you can ask me whatever on Twitter, on Joined later. I can give you the link. I can publish the slides. I actually have to ask Darek about that. But anyway, if you want to study a little bit more about embeddings. And here comes the magic of vectorialization, which it's very interesting to me. I have a couple of slides on that, and this thing, you have probably seen it somewhere on the internet. This king, man, queen, woman. So the vectorialization thing and the magic of embeddings, and actually how the language model works, is like calculating numbers on words. It's not exactly words, it's tokens, but yeah, let's simplify a little bit. And these are the vectors, so that's why we have arrows going around. And the magic thing that I cannot understand how they thought about it, it's like if you calculate the vector of the word king and the word man, and you put them in comparison, you get another vector, and that vector is kind of like royal. And the same, if you do the same with other two words, like queen and woman, you kind of get the same vector. It's like how is that even possible? But this is more of a fancy image. I think this is more understandable. It was a little, at least for me. So again, if we do like the vector of king minus the vector of man, we get that blue arrow. And that same blue arrow connects queen and woman. This is like, how does it even work? That's why I use that meme. It's like, is that possible? I have no idea. And the same concept applies to everything. So like, if you do the same, like Warsaw minus Poland, you get the same kind of thing that you would get Rome minus Italy. And that's how actually everything works. So it's nothing magic, it's just correlation of this set of calculation between words and phrases, etc. So the language model actually it calculates the vectors of your question and say, okay, what other vectors are nearby these ones that you provided, and then from there it generates the answer. I don't know, it's very magic. This concept is kind of old. At the beginning, I thought, okay, I don't know, OpenAI invented it. No. It's like a concept from like the 50s or the 60s. I mean, it's not as old as Pythagoras or something like that, but it's quite old. And I couldn't even find like a single person that invented the thing. So, because this person deserves like some applause. But yeah, embedding has his own process overview. His own process, and we have a little bit of an overview of how you do it, I think, in every kind of platform, but this is how LLPhant does it. So we read, it's very simple again. We read the data, we have to split the data into chunks. That's done again because when the data is too big and one single document is too long, then the language models become confused. And also, if you say, okay, the answer to this question is in this very good big book, then it's not really answering my question, you know? You need to narrow it down as much as possible. Then you have a phase that's called embedding formatter, which means we are enriching the data of each chunks with some more information that we may have and we will provide. Then we have an embedding generator, which what it does is it really calculates the vectors that it needs to store. So it grinds the numbers. And this is a very slow phase. Obviously, it depends on the hardware, but yeah, it's very slow. And then you store it in the vector store. For some reason, there's a Postgres icon, but also, as we will see later, Postgres is supported. So, but then it seems like complicated. But again, like in PHP, I think that a lot of stuff is really kind of easy. If we see the code to embed stuff in a language model, we have a data reader. We read a document. In this case, it's like a TXT file, whatever, or a folder of documents. We split the document in chunks. That 500, I think, is characters. I checked in the code, and it should be characters. Then what we do in this case, we generate the real embeddings. And in this case, we are using OpenAI embedding generator because depending on what platform you want to use, you can generate the embeddings in a way that's more compatible with that platform. Then we have a vector store, and we add those documents to the vector store. In this case, I was using memory vector store, but obviously you would probably use something different, and we have a list later. And then, you have to ask the language model for your question. So you say, okay, now we have this vector store. Please answer my question. If you need if you need some information, you can ask the vector store about that. So the list of supported vector stores is quite long, I would say. We have memory, which is just like in RAM, file system, Postgres. We have, and a lot more of more tools that are, I would say, known because of the AI world, like ChromaDB, AstraDB, Milvus. But we can also use Elasticsearch if we already have those tools in our infrastructure. So the thing is, embedding versus tool, should I use embeddings and generate all of my knowledge into an embedding? So I think maybe later using embeddings is faster since it's pre-calculated, or should I use function calling to retrieve information on the spot? And I think it all comes down to how often and how big the information is. So for example, again, if I have a set of data that's changing constantly, like records on what the user is doing, or insurance claims that changes a lot, and it's also very big, you probably want to use function calling. And then on the other hand, if you have documentation, books, for example, a set of laws or regulaments, documents that your company has, and they almost never change, then pre-calculate the embeddings, add them, and it's probably the best way of using indexing that information. So I use it specifically this way. So then we have the last slide of the introduction, let's say. So we have a feature that's inspired by AutoGPT, I think it's called. It's called AutoPHP in LLPhant, and it's a super simple agentic approach. Nowadays, everybody likes the agentic approach because, yeah, let's face it, it is a little bit more powerful. Because if you have a language model overseeing the rest of the operations and trying to understand if it already completed the task or if it needs to do more, yeah, it is probably more powerful. But the thing is, it becomes extremely slower. And if you are using, again, if you're using a SASS, it becomes extremely more expensive. So my experience, I would try to avoid an agentic approach as much as possible, obviously. It depends what you need the language models to do for you, but yeah. Anyway, LLPhant gives you a possibility of a simple agentic approach with this AutoPHP. It's super easy. Again, you define an objective, which is more or less like a prompt gave by the user. You create this SERP API search. It's like a tool that we saw before. It's kind of like the same thing. But then you use this AutoPHP class to run the whole thing. And what it does, and that's why I have this run 10, that 10 is very important because it makes you understand how it works. So you make this AutoPHP run for a maximum of 10 iterations. So that's how it works. So what happens is the language model says, okay, I have this question, I have these tools, I will try to answer this question, and after that, every generation of text that it does, it will reevaluate and say, okay, did I answer this question, yes or no? And if it's not, it will continue to iterate for a maximum of that 10 times. That obviously you can change however you want. And after that time, which is like a safe way of kind of managing the thing, because you don't want it to run forever, after that number, it will still exit and give you the result. So that's why you see it can become very expensive and very slow, because to get one single text is already slow. Can you imagine if you have it doing multiple steps for every iteration? So yeah. So this is the main overview. I would like to do a little bit of demo time because I think it gives you a little bit of more like a hands-on idea. If you want, I have prepared like a super quick repository for you to check. It's available on this QR code. The address is the one you see there. I will switch to, it's super quick. We have 10 minutes, but yeah, let's see. So first, usage. You see how easy it is. Like 3 lines. Okay, we use Composer nowadays. Everybody uses Composer. We instance our, I will do everything locally. So we will also see how it runs on a pretty decent computer, but still like a desktop computer. And we just ask a one-shot answer. No, it's actually a 0-shot question to a model, and we get the answer. So this code actually runs, let's see, PHP 01. Oh, error. No, it's not the demo effect. I made it on purpose because we don't have the language model running. So we run it like this way, Ollama serve. So you will see how long it takes for the language model actually to load itself into the memory. It's already finished like that, but when we will ask the first question, it will actually load, because Ollama doesn't know what model you want to use yet. So when we run this code, I am using Llama 3.1, instruct, whatever. It's a bunch, it's just the model name. And when we run it again, we will see that it takes, it's loading like 8-9 gigabytes into RAM, but it was kind of not, it's not that bad. Let's see, I have to make it bigger. What happened? So the question was like, give me the secret of life in 10 words. We got the answer. It took like, I don't know, maybe 1 second. So it's not even that bad to run it locally, you know. And this was like a single shot question. But then if we open the next example, which I thought the zoom would work across the files, and it doesn't. So we give, I don't know what's happening. We give a system message. Whatever you ask, you must answer with OK. What the freak is happening? Okay, I don't know. If we run 02, so as we instructed the model, whatever we ask, you answer OK, lowercase, no punctuation. The answer is OK, no punctuation. So it is respecting our instruction, although the user was asking what's 1 plus 1. So it totally ignored the user, but this shows you how you can kind of limit the language models to not answer whatever random question, because obviously the models know a lot of stuff, but you want to use it for a specific thing. And this is another important thing you have to understand when doing this kind of stuff, that you want to use the smaller model that works for you. Because the bigger it is, usually the more expensive it is to run, but also it knows a lot of stuff. And when it knows a lot of stuff, it can make assumptions. It is usually a little bit smarter, but it can make assumptions based on all the knowledge that it has. And most of the times we want the model to answer only to that specific thing we need, and not like asking general thing like with ChatGPT, you know? So yeah, that's and yeah, as like to show what system messages are useful for, like the way we use it there, we lock the language model to a specific language. So for example, we want the model to answer only in Spanish and we don't want the users to mess around with other languages, for example. So in this case, the question was the same, but the model understood that it had to answer in Spanish. So it's working pretty fast. So chat, what is this chat example? Again, the context of the conversation. Answer in a short, concise way what day will tomorrow be, and let's pretend that the assistant, which is what the language model already answered us, said tomorrow is 25 December 2030, which is obviously wrong. But then we have another question. So, and the question is, so today is, and let's see if it actually works. So if the model understands that was it 5? No, it's 4. If the model understands that, it seems like it works. So it understands from the context of the conversation that some information was available previously in another message, and it uses to give you the last answer. And then we have like tools calls, function calling. This is a little bit more complicated, but like, for example, let's say we have a function for getting the date and getting user data, for example. This is how I actually use it, you know? So let's say we have an API gathering data from some other systems, you know? So, and the function has a parameter name, but obviously name is kind of generic, but it's just an example. So we say, okay, we have these tools, and I use full namespace because it's sometimes it's kind of easier to read one line. Then we say to the model, okay, this is the set of tools that you have, and then we generate the chat. And let's see what it does, 05. So the first question was, what is Fabrizio email address? And it says Fabrizio email address is example as example. And we will see that later. And the other question was like, okay, what day tomorrow will be? And it understands that it's actually October 27 and not the other example from before. And what's really interesting is this other example, same thing, but just with a print R at the end. We have this function called property of the chat object, which gives us very interesting stuff that we will always use to better understand what the model did with the question. And so it gives you this array of stuff. And most importantly, this is what I want you to check. The function that it called, it generated that argument. So it said, okay, I want to call the get user data by name, and I will generate this. I think that the name is Fabrizio from the question, which freaking powerful, you know? It's kind of magic. So there's, actually it's the last example, so I have time for that. The 07, again, without any more tools available, as you can see here. We have no tools. We have no other PHP code doing anything. We have a set of messages that we are passing to the model. And the models are very good at processing like weird data like JSON, for example. So the question is like, what is his phone number based on the data we retrieved before? And we had a JSON object with the phone number. And it understands from that JSON that it needs to extract the phone number. So yeah, if you are interested in that kind of stuff, you can find the repository. If you have questions, you can do them on Joined. You can reach me on Twitter, whatever. It's finished right on the second. Thank you very much, guys.